So who's right? Well, Richard Dawkins said, it's absolutely safe to say if you meet someone who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane, or wicked.
Well, it is a fact that anyone, like this preacher, for example, who doesn't know what evolution is or how it works, is at least ignorant of that by definition. But that condition is curable. I think nearly all of us have been duped by some pseudoscience nonsense peddler at some point in our misguided youth. But if you care what the truth is, you'll find out what the truth is. Curiosity is the cure, so you won't be ignorant anymore. And that's why the Bible treats curiosity as both the original and the ultimate sin. But ignorance isn't just what you don't know, it's also what you won't know, what you refuse to learn. And some people are incurious. They don't want to know. They just want to believe what they want to believe, regardless whether it's true or not. That is willful ignorance, and this preacher is willfully ignorant by his own admission.
Deuterostomia. Now, he will make fun of me for not being able to pronounce these words, because I have made a lifetime habit of avoiding this stuff to make it simple for people to I want people to understand, not to sit back and marvel, whoa, he knew a big word.
Willful ignorance is a form of stupidity. Stupidity is defined as having or showing a lack of intelligence or common sense. Intelligence is defined as the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. But I and many others have corrected this preacher on nearly all of his points countless times over the last couple decades, citing all the academic sources and data necessary to prove that he's gotten everything wrong every time. Yet he keeps repeating all the same fundamental mistakes without ever correcting anything or learning anything. So he does not acquire or apply knowledge. Common sense is defined as good sense and sound judgment in practical matters. But the preacher has always misunderstood everything, even his own citations, all of them. He's never gotten anything right, ever, not in this whole seminar so far. Yet he keeps jumping to unwarranted assumptions of absolute confidence, the arrogance of ignorance. So, yeah. Remember that this preacher's job, literally his mission in life, is to deny demonstrable realities of science in order to make believe in an alternative reality that can only be believed on faith in lieu of evidence, and which must be defended in spite of evidence to the contrary. And one reaction to rebuttal is the backfire effect, where believers are even more convinced after they've seen proof that whatever they believe is wrong. And this preacher is also a sovereign citizen, another form of reality denial, where folks pretend that some loophole exists such that laws do not apply to them. And this preacher once tried to tell a judge that the law he broke was itself illegal, and that he was outside of American jurisdiction because he lived in the Republic of Florida. As if he could convince a federal court that one of our states was really a different country. Religious extremists whose beliefs include a rejection of science have to deny reality as a matter of course, to contradict all of the scientific evidence and to instead present deceptive distortions and misleading misinformation. Lest we forget, the preacher has already spent a decade in prison, having been convicted of 58 counts of 3 different types of fraud, and he has just been sentenced to jail again, this time for beating his wife till she ended up in a hospital. As I see it, the creationism movement is headed by 3 big names. The Institute for Creation Research was the first factory of false claims, and they began the current science denial movement. But they're in a lower spot now because all their former leaders are dead. Remember that every testable claim made by intelligent design theorists at the Discovery Institute was disproved by science, and intelligent design itself was exposed as a deceptive disguise of a religious textbook and a criminal conspiracy to get around the law against teaching creationism in public schools. That puts Answers in Genesis at the top of the heap as the most prolific peddler of anti-evolution propaganda there is. If Answers in Genesis is Ringling Brothers Circus, then this preacher is just a carnival barker. Despite his record-breaking pace of more falsehoods per minute than any other American evangelical, not just in a sprint, but in marathons too. Enough that their top-tier young earth creationist, Ken Hovind, the CEO of Answers in Genesis, has called this preacher out as dishonest multiple times, telling his readers not to listen to this guy. And you might know Ken Hovind from the debate he did with Bill Nye the Science Guy, wherein Hovind admitted that he believes what he does on faith alone, and that he will never admit when he's wrong, because no amount of proof could ever change his mind. Answers in Genesis is a $20 million a year misinformation operation. They contribute to scientific illiteracy, and they are a big part of the reason why the United States has such a low acceptance of, respect for, or competence in science. The only country on this poll with a lower acceptance of evolution than the United States is Turkey, and that is because of Adnan Akhtar, also known as Harun Yahya. He ran a creationism website wherein he would take whatever pseudoscientific nonsense answers in Genesis had already published, and he would replace every reference to Jesus and the Bible with the Quran and Allah. But he's not in that business anymore, not since 2018, when he was sentenced to 1,075 years in prison for sexual assault, sexual abuse of minors, fraud, and attempted political and military espionage. Harun Yahya kept a harem of sex slaves whom he called his kittens, all of whom he also pushed into cosmetic surgery to tailor their appearance to his liking. He was the creepiest of creepers. So yeah, Dawkins was right. Anyone who doesn't know about evolution is at least ignorant, and if they're apologists, then it's worse than that. As this preacher himself has so amply demonstrated, it is not possible to defend creationism with actually factually accurate information.
Sounds like he's open for a discussion. When I went to England, we tried everything to get to debate Richard Dawkins. He refused. He hung up on my secretary. His secretary hung up on me when I called back.
Could that be because they'd already said no, and the preacher is too rude to take no for an answer? College professors do not owe anything to the willfully ignorant. Hello, Professor. I have a religious nutcase on the phone, an uneducated American idiot with no credibility, who wants to make himself look good and you look bad by sharing a stage so that he can get his stink on you, to waste your time and insult you like an impudent fourth grader, while creating the illusion that magical mysticism is just as good as science. No? You won't debate him? Gosh, why not? Why should any academic expert give equal time to a know-nothing carnival fraud and charlatan like this preacher? Especially since we know that he will never admit or correct any of his endless errors, and that he would only use that opportunity to show his disrespect.
Jesus said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your mind." There's no mental reason to reject Christianity.
Yes, there is, plenty of them, but we're not talking about Christianity right now. Remember that most Christians worldwide accept evolution, and most of the world's evolutionists are Christian. So we're not talking about rejecting Christianity, we're talking about creationism, a form of religious extremism that is also a rejection of science. Specifically, the scientific principle of methodological naturalism, where all postulations must be based on objective, empirical, testable, indicative evidence. Creationism is a rejection of science in favor of the unwarranted assumption of the absolute, infallible authority of Scripture. However, there are lots of different scriptures all claiming to be the absolute truth and the revealed word of different gods of different religions. But every claim that any religion makes is either not evidently true, meaning that it's something you have to believe on faith, or it's evidently not true, meaning that it's already been proven wrong. Yet, the faithful are determined to believe it anyway. No one comes to creationism by way of reason, nor could they, since there's not even one argument that is both true and indicative of that position. Never was one, not that it is rational or logical. If you think you've got one, I dare you to explain it in the comments below and see how many seconds that impression lasts before it is shown to be false, fraudulent, or fallacious, like every religious argument always is.
It's a logical deduction to say, hey, there must have been a designer.
It is a logical fallacy to assume anything that is not indicated or supported. Nor should you assume that nothing can ever happen unless it was intended by an intelligent agent. And even if you want to pretend that there's a God, it is irrational to assume that the Bible or the Quran or what have you is his infallible word, as if fantasy folklore trumps the facts. Learn to inquire more and assume less.
You see something complicated like this world, you say, hey, must have been a designer.
No, complexity does not imply design. The unnecessarily excessive complexity that we see in biochemistry is indicative of a haphazard incidental assemblage, whereas we would expect that an intelligent designer could produce designs with efficient simplicity instead.
Evolution's not a fact. It's not even a good theory. It's not even a hypothesis. It's a metaphysical research program.
Evolution is a fact easily demonstrated, and it is one of the best supported theories in all of science, even better supported than the theory of gravity. It is the foundation of modern biology. But since this preacher cannot cite facts, he has to use mind quotations again. And this time he misquotes Karl Popper, who has clarified that that's not what he actually said, and he wasn't talking about evolution. Instead, he said that he did once think that natural selection was untestable as a mechanism of evolution, and he said that natural selection was a successful metaphysical research program. But he later changed his mind and apologized for misleading people in his ignorance. So he never said what the preacher says he did, and he corrected himself, confessing his own error, lamenting that he said such contemptuous things in his youth. I'll include a link in the description explaining this in detail.
Julian Huxley said, I suppose the reason we leapt at origin of species was the idea of God interfered with our sexual mores. We don't want God telling us what to do.
First of all, if you're talking about evolution and you mention the name Huxley, we think you're talking about Thomas Huxley, also known as Darwin's bulldog. But you're talking about one of his grandsons, Julian. And my first thought on hearing that quote is, that's a stupid thing to say because it's wrong. And I mean all the time, for everyone. No one ever accepted evolution or rejected God for that reason. Never. Then I looked into it and realized that Julian Huxley never actually said that. The claim that he did came from a book by D. James Kennedy in 1980, but when pressed for sources, Kennedy couldn't give any citation. It turned out that he probably misread an article from 1966 that was actually talking about something else. He remembered the quote incorrectly and attributed it to the wrong person. But Kennedy didn't realize that, so instead he just asserted that everyone knows that Julian said that, and so did his brother. Except that Aldous Huxley never said that either. He did once say something vaguely similar in a different context and with an entirely different meaning. I don't think anyone ever said that particular quote other than religious apologists trying to misrepresent and demonize evolutionary scientists.
Evolution is a religion. Even Michael Ruse said that. He said, I'm an ardent evolutionist and an ex-Christian. But I must admit that in his one complaint, Mr. Gish is but one of many to make it. The literalists are absolutely right. Evolution is a religion. This was true of evolution in the beginning, and it's true of evolution still today.
Except that that was never true, even if Michael Ruse really said that. And it turns out he actually said otherwise. He wrote an article complaining that this paragraph has received more attention and more repetition than anything else he had ever written, despite the clarifications he included in the original writing, which make clear that evolution is not a religion, but that he thought some people could treat it like one. I'll include a link in the description that Michael Ruse himself wrote contesting this misleading misquotation. More importantly, evolution is not a religion in any sense. Evolution is the branch of biology that explains biodiversity. It doesn't permit supernatural explanations and has no doctrines, nor dogma, nor fables with morals, nor rituals, nor traditions, nor holidays, nor leaders or defenders of the faith, because it doesn't allow faith. It holds nothing sacred, there's no place of worship, no enchantments, no clergy, no fashion of garb, and it neither promotes nor discourages belief in gods or souls, and says nothing about how we should live or what happens after we die. Evolution is therefore not a religion, and creationists know it's not. Though this preacher desperately wants to convince you that it is, because he has to. The tu quo qui fallacy requires an illusion of false equivalence, as if the contrast of fact versus fantasy comes down to nothing more than two equal options of whatever you want to make believe. But no, we're not just talking about mere beliefs here. Evolution is not a religion unless you redefine what evolution is, as the preacher has tried to do. And remember, he thinks that Big Bang cosmology and stellar nucleosynthetic theory and planetary accretion theory are all part of evolution, because he thinks that evolution means atheism, that any theory that doesn't assume God is therefore is part of the overarching theory of philosophical naturalism. The preacher says this ignoring the many competent scientists who are Christian and also understand and accept evolutionary theory. The preacher tried to redefine religion, too. He thinks it's whatever you believe for any reason, especially if you can't prove it. There is a rule in science that no theory can be proven in the positive sense, that not even atomic theory, the theory of gravity, or the germ theory of disease can ever be declared proven. For example, Einstein's theory of relativity was effectively proven in a colloquial sense at least twice, when predictions made by his theory were fulfilled, once in 1919 while Einstein was still alive, and then again a century after he made those predictions. But we can never say that relativity has been proven, and the reason we cannot is because that would close our minds to further revelations or corrections, just like religion. Like, maybe relativity has worked okay so far, but it's not perfect. Indeed, it may well be flawed, and we need to be open to that, because science always has to progress. It can't be like religious beliefs that can never be questioned or overturned. And this preacher uses that to pretend as if science is unverifiable and uncertain, as if any field of science that contradicts his own faith-based beliefs must be a competing religion. He cannot admit to any error either, so he will grasp at whatever straws in his attempted defense, ignoring all the standard definitions and claiming that a religion might be any belief that you happen to be passionate about. However, if this was a court of law, then we could and would have already sufficiently proved evolution by an overwhelming preponderance of evidence beyond reasonable doubt.
Okay, I think every textbook from every public school teaches all these as part of the general overarching principle.
Except that none of them, no textbook anywhere ever described what you describe as evolution. Unless you want to get into A. Becker or some of the other Christian deliberate misrepresentations to try to deceive students. But if you're talking about actual scientific documents, nobody agrees with the way you misrepresent this. So we're going to keep evolution as descent with inherent genetic modification.
So descent with inherent genetic modification, so they already have the ability to reproduce, they already are alive, they're already able to move, replicate, and ingest, digest food. You've already bypassed the major hurdles that are going to be a great obstacle to your religion.
I don't have a religion, and but
you certainly do.
We absolutely certainly do not. And we're about to prove that. Kent,
okay.
I want to hear your infantile definition of what a religion is, and let's see how you've explored that.
You can look it up in any dictionary. Look it up in Wikipedia.
Well, I have actually looked it up in a lot of different dictionaries.
So let's look it up. The standard definition of religion is the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. Evolution is not a power, it's a process, and nor does it control anything, and there's no way to worship it. Merriam-Webster says that religion is the service and worship of God or the supernatural, the important part being or the supernatural, because there are some religions that don't have a god, that aren't based on the worship of a god, but that do believe in and revere the supernatural. However, whatever reverence we might have for nature, even naturalism, neither of those are supernatural. The 1913 version of the same dictionary gives several senses, none of which apply to evolution. And for consistency, let's take Webster's dictionary back as far as we can, to 1828, before Darwin published his theory, wherein we see that religion is belief in God, performance of duties to God, performance of duties we owe to God, and any system of faith and worship. But as I've already shown, evolution is not a faith-based system. It's based on evidence. So none of these definitions apply to evolution.
So I want to hear what you define as a religion and how we can distinguish things that are not religion from things that are.
Okay, I would like to ask Kyle or one of the moderators to kind of keep time here, because Aaron keeps over-talking me and monopolizing the conversation. This is supposed to be a discussion. I would like equal time.
Okay. Fair enough. He's asked you a question. We're going to give you ample time to respond to his question with a direct answer for a direct question.
I have up on screen the definition from Random House Webster's College Dictionary, year 2000, page 1116. Religion, a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe. That is what fits your religion of evolutionism.
Except that it doesn't.
It does. It's exactly
it. No, it doesn't, because evolution has nothing to do with the cause of the universe, nor certainly not the purpose of it.
Does it have to do with the nature of the universe, how things work?
How things work, yes.
Okay, well then you
but
have a
not
religion.
With the universe.
Okay.
No part of the definition he's citing fits with evolution at all. No definition of religion fits evolution, unless it is so vague that everything is a religion, even football. Except that even then, the most devoted football fans ever will still tell you that Christianity is their religion, not football. Every notion or practice that is commonly accepted as a religion by both its adherents and its critics is a doctrine of ritual traditions, ceremonies, mythology, and the associated dogma of faith-based belief systems that all include the idea that a supernatural essence of self, be it a soul or consciousness or memories, etc., may somehow transcend the death of the physical body and continue on in some other form, whether it is reincarnation, damnation, or a soul that remains unconscious in the Greek Hades or the Hebrew Sheol. This applies to every religion and only to religion, but it doesn't apply to evolution or atheism either.
We believe in evolution because the only alternative is creation. And that's right. That is the only alternative.
As we pointed out in a previous episode, Arthur Keith never said that either. And creationism is not an alternative at all. Not only is there no evidence of creation, there is literally not even a possibility to consider. Not when there is no truth to it, and all the facts are against it. Creationism, including intelligent design, meets exactly none of the criteria required of a scientific theory. There is no support for it, and it doesn't explain anything. Creationism is just the excuse that, I don't know, therefore magic.
Yeah, we all know this guy, he's a friggin' ass. Yeah, he calls himself a doctor, but he hasn't passed a science class. But even though he says that evolution was just a made-up claim, yeah, I don't know about you, but that is fucking lame. I guess the Flintstones were real, just like the taxes he didn't steal. You're a fucktard, aren't you, Kent? You're a fucktard, aren't you, Kent?
Have you stopped beating your wife yet?
You're a fucktard.